It's Violet here with True Crime and Art. I haven't been on here in a while because it's been summer and it's really hard to talk about true crime with my kids at home because, I don't want to traumatize them too much at such an early age. Just normal amount of traumatizing. So I had to wait till the kids were back in school, and then we had a hurricane and then no electricity. Anyway, so here we are. I'm super excited to be back and talking to you guys about true crime while I paint something. So if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button. It helps me out, and that way you can see when I come up with new videos, which will hopefully be weekly. So you guys ready? Let's get into it, okay? Today we are talking about Dr. Christopher Duntsch, who is also known as Dr. Death. And there is a podcast on, I think from Wondery. It's about 6 hours. I listened to all of it. It was awesome, and it really got me interested in this case because it's just freaking crazy. It's psychotic. He's psychotic. Anywho, if you aren't familiar with him, we're going to talk about him today. If you are, hopefully you'll learn a little something, or at least you'll find it interesting. So, sorry for the noise. My dog is in here and she's being all sorts of extra. All right. Christopher Duntsch was born April 3rd, 1971 in Montana. His dad was a physical therapist and a Christian missionary, and his mom was a school teacher. And Christopher Duntsch was a normal kid. They said he was a nice kid. He tried really hard at what he did. He worked very hard. Whenever he was in high school, he was a star football player. It was a really small private Christian school. And his biggest goal, Christopher's biggest goal, was to play Division I football like his dad. And he wanted to play Division I football at either Colorado State or Colorado University. Now, like I said, whenever he was in high school, he was one of their star football players, but for a really small school. So he didn't make it in Division I football, but he did actually end up going to Millsaps to play football. He got a scholarship there. Look what I just did, guys. Man, I guess it's better than getting all over my wall like I usually do. Anyway, he went to Millsaps and he played I believe it's still Division III football. Now, after a year of being there, he just really still wanted to play Division I. So he actually ended up transferring to Colorado State University, and he was a walk-on for their football team. Now, it's said that he really wasn't super great at football, but he worked really hard. He was known to tell the coach, say Coach, just let's do that drill again, please. I'll work on it until I get it. And so he wasn't, like I said, awesome, but he worked really hard. Now, even after a year of playing Division I football, which was his dream, he got homesick. And he moved back to University of Memphis, Tennessee, because he was homesick. So he moved in with his parents, and he was like, all good, I'll just play football here. Well, he had transferred so many times that he was ineligible to play football for University of Memphis, Tennessee. So he said, you know what? I'll do the next best thing. I'll be a doctor. Not only am I going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a neurosurgeon. So, remember when I said he worked really hard? He ended up graduating his undergrad in 1995. And then he ended up going to the University of Tennessee at Memphis Medical School. And he said, you know what? Not only am I going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a neurosurgeon, because why not? Why the hell not? So he enrolls in medical school, and he's on track to be a neurosurgeon. Now, at this school, he enrolls in a dual program, which means he's enrolling to get his MD, PhD. So they say really smart guy, really dedicated, really he's gonna do it. He's gonna work really hard no matter what it means and get his goal done, right? As he's working on his PhD, MD, he's spending a lot of time in the lab. That's really where his talent was in the lab. And he was doing research on stem cells and how they could benefit people with back problems. He launched or founded a company called Duntsch, and it was so promising that two of his supervisors in his neurology residency decided that they were going to invest in Duntsch because they're like, this is going to be big. It's going to blow up. This is going to be big. So he is finishing his residency. He is running this company or starting this company, getting investors. He's doing well for himself. He's on a high. Now, this is when the cracks start to show. It was said that during one of his birthday celebrations, he and his friends stayed up all night, drinking, doing pills, and doing lines of cocaine. And he didn't go to bed. In the morning, he puts on his lab coat and he goes and does rounds for his patients after staying up all night, doing pills, drinking, and cocaine. In fact, one of the investors, Rand Paul, is it Rand Paul? I keep saying Rand Paul, Rand Page. One of his investors, Rand Page, had a morning meeting with him, and Dr. Duntsch was just like throwing back screwdrivers. He said the way that he was drinking them and able to just keep going was like somewhat impressive, but also concerning. Now, they being the investors, ended up pushing Dr. Duntsch out of the company, out of Duntsch. They sued him for stocks and for money. It's not really quite clear what like brought that on, but it did happen. Now, Duntsch is still around. It's an yearly revenue, I believe, of $8 million. So it's doing pretty well, and he has no part of it. Dr. Duntsch has no part of it. In fact, they are very clear that they parted ways with him a long, long time ago. Now, Dr. Duntsch, he's kicked out of Duntsch, right? And he is completing his residency program. And there's a complaint to the medical school saying that they saw him using drugs before going to see patients. I'm thinking it's probably from his birthday party. So they order him, they being the medical school, order Dr. Duntsch to take a drug test. Well, Dr. Duntsch disappears for a couple days. He's like, oh, sorry, bye. Well, whenever he comes back, they say, okay, you didn't take the drug test. Now you have to go to a program for impaired physicians. To which he's like, okay, sweet. He goes to the program for impaired physicians, comes back, and during the remainder of his residency, it's said that he was supposed to be highly supervised, and the amount of surgery or the types of surgeries he could do had to be limited. Now, he finishes his residency, and at this point, a typical neurosurgeon does over 1,000 unassisted surgeries, okay? Dr. Duntsch had done less than 100. Yeah, like where's the checks and balances on that? I mean, like, don't they have a clipboard to be like, surgery 558? Where the hell's the clipboard? I don't know. So Dr. Duntsch, he finishes residency with his crap amount of surgeries under belt, and he gets his first job at the Minimally Invasive Spine Institute right outside of Dallas. And whenever they called to get his references, they said the medical school told them that he was the most hardworking and brightest neurosurgeon they had ever trained. Pretty great reference, right? So they, being the Spine Institute, feel secure giving him a $600,000 advance to work there. They were super excited about their new neurosurgeon. He came with all these great recommendations. Well, people who work with them felt differently. In fact, there was a doctor named Dr. Kirby, Dr. Randall Kirby, and he's important, okay, guys? He works with Dr. Duntsch, and he said he was the most arrogant, cocky jerk he had ever met. And he said that was his first impression of him, like, immediately. In fact, the other doctors in the practice could not stand him because he wouldn't follow through with his commitments to his patients. The last one being a patient he was supposed to watch over the weekend, and instead of watching him over the weekend, Dr. Duntsch decided he needed to go to Vegas. Didn't tell anybody. The only reason that the Spine Institute found out is because another doctor realized that this particular patient was not having rounds done for him. So whenever he gets back from Vegas, they let him go. Now, the problem with this is they let him go, but his privileges at Baylor Plano Hospital are not revoked at this point. So that means while he's not employed by the Spine Institute, he can still do surgery at Baylor Plano, which is in fact what happens. So in December of 2011, while he still has privileges at Baylor Plano, Dr. Duntsch does surgery on a man named Lee Passmore. Now, Dr. Duntsch is assisted by a vascular surgeon named Dr. Mark Howell. Now, during the surgery, apparently, I'm supposed to do more than one thing at a time, but it's not happening. I'm out of practice. Sorry, guys. So during the surgery, Dr. Duntsch cuts out a ligament around the spinal column, which is not supposed to happen. And he starts misplacing hardware in the spine, like he's putting it in and can't find it, and it's causing lots of bleeding. He's putting a screw in and strips a screw so badly he can't get it out. So the vascular surgeon at this point legit grabs the scalpel from Dr. Duntsch and is like, no, you're not doing this anymore. We're stopping this, right? So at this point, Dr. Duntsch leaves the OR. They close up Lee Passmore. Now, when Lee wakes up, he's in excruciating pain. It's awful. He now lives in chronic pain, and he's in a wheelchair. Or if he can walk, he has trouble walking, but he primarily stays in a wheelchair. Now, that is December of 2011. Unfortunately, it doesn't stop there, right? December, so then in January, Dr. Duntsch performs surgery on Barry Morgulhoff. He has excessive pain in his neck and back, and his doctor told him that if he would lose weight and exercise, it would alleviate the pain. But Barry Morgulhoff really insisted upon seeing a surgeon for his problem. He was actually at a pain specialist. The pain specialist gave Barry Dr. Duntsch's information, and Barry goes to meet with Dr. Duntsch, and he loves Dr. Duntsch. He says he's awesome. He's very personable. He checked his Google references. He had 5 stars, which 5 stars on Google is kind of hard to get, just 5 stars. One Mad Karen, and you got 4.2 or something. But anyway, he had 5 stars. So he felt really comfortable going into surgery with Dr. Duntsch. Now, during this surgery, Dr. Kirby, do you guys remember Dr. Kirby from the Spine Institute? Dr. Kirby assists on this. Now, this should have been a routine case for Dr. Duntsch. Dr. Kirby said, this was the type of surgery that a neurosurgeon should be able to do in their sleep. Well, not Dr. Duntsch. No. He started off wrong. He got the wrong tool. He was supposed to get a cutting tool, and he got a grabbing tool, and he started to damage the spine. So Dr. Kirby and Dr. Duntsch start arguing in the OR, which apparently doesn't happen. That's a big deal. Dr. Kirby immediately leaves and goes to report him. So Dr. Duntsch, there's so many doctors in the story, sorry. Dr. Duntsch finishes up the surgery and closes him up, right? Well, Barry Morgulhoff wakes up in excruciating pain. And he ends up having to have another back surgery to correct the things that Dr. Duntsch did for him. While the second surgeon is repairing Barry Morgulhoff's, botched surgery, he finds spine fragments where Dr. Duntsch had broken his spine and left bone inside his body. Unfortunately, Barry Morgulhoff walks with a cane now. It is a degenerative problem he has. He will be confined to a wheelchair. He has excruciating pain all the time. Okay. Now, Dr. Duntsch is not stopping, because then in February of 2012, he agrees to operate on a friend of his named Jerry Summers. Now, Jerry it wasn't even a huge deal. He had an old football injury from high school that had been aggravated by a car accident, and he and Chris Duntsch were friends, so he said, hey, will you do surgery on me? And Dr. Duntsch was like, sure, great. Whenever Jerry Summers woke up, he was paralyzed from the neck down. So he was going in for something, his back was annoying him, and paralyzed from the neck down. It turns out that Christopher Duntsch had cut his vertebral artery and there was a ton of bleeding. So in order to stop the bleeding, he had packed Jerry's spine with so much anticoagulant that it squeezed his spine and caused permanent damage to where he was paralyzed from the neck down. Like, I don't even think I would cause that much problem if I were doing surgery, and I have zero medical training. Okay, next, Dr. Duntsch does surgery on Kelly Martin, who is an elementary school teacher that is having back pain because she fell off her attic ladder when she was getting Christmas decorations down from the attic. So goes into what should be a routine surgery. And during the surgery, her blood pressure drops for some reason. They're not quite sure. They get it stabilized. They get her into recovery. And when she wakes up, she's screaming in pain and slapping and clawing her legs, which are all splotchy. And they have to sedate her because she's losing her mind. I mean, rightly so. And she never wakes up. She actually dies because he had cut a major blood vessel and she bled to death within hours of him completing the surgery. Okay, at this point, Dr. Duntsch is requested to take a drug test. So guess what? He takes it. He didn't run away this time. But it comes back as diluted with water. Why the hell wasn't he fired at that point? No, they're like, hey, can you take another one? So 3 days later, he takes another one. And it comes back as clean. But at this point, they have decided to revoke his privileges. Now, you guys remember what I was saying about privileges? If they revoke his privileges without firing him and reporting it to the National Practitioners Data Bank, nobody knows what's happening. Nobody knows there was a problem. So at this point, Baylor Plano does not report him to the National Practitioners Data Bank, so nobody knows that this has happened. But his privileges are revoked and he resigns. Since he has not had any complaints filed in the data bank, he gets another job at Dallas Medical. And in July of 2012, he does surgery on a 64-year-old banker named Floella Brown. Floella is about to retire and she wants to enjoy her retirement, so she feels like she needs to get her medical issues under control, which include some neck and back problems. So she's going in for a really routine procedure with Dr. Duntsch. Routine. We know how this goes, right? Now, about 30 minutes into the procedure, Dr. Duntsch is starting to complain about not being able to see her spine because there's so much blood. And everybody in the OR is kind of freaking out, where the hell is this blood coming from? I mean, it's soaked. It's all on the drapes on her. They have to put towels on the floor. So they give her a blood transfusion to get her stabilized. He finishes the surgery and he sends her to recovery. Now, Floella Brown does wake up, but not for long. She quickly loses consciousness and they cannot figure out what's happening, why, what's going on. So they end up sending her into the OR. They don't send her to the OR. They send her to ICU. Between the number of doctors' names that I have and all the letters that go along with medical stuff, sorry, my brain, maybe I should have chosen a really easy murderer. So the very next day, Dr. Duntsch is performing a surgery on Mary Eford. She is an extremely active 71-year-old. In fact, the reason why she's come to see him is because her back pain is keeping her from being able to get on the treadmill. So he's like, yes, I'll do this surgery. It's a routine procedure. I'm never, if a surgeon ever says to me it's a routine procedure, I'm going to be like, nope, we're done. We're done. So Dr. Duntsch, it's the day of Mary Eford's surgery, the day after Floella Brown's surgery, okay? The day after her surgery, day of Mary Eford's surgery. He arrives 35 minutes late, and it's not funny, but everybody in the OR realizes that he's been wearing the same scrubs for 3 days. How do they know, you ask? Well, his scrubs have a hole on the butt cheek, and he's not wearing any underwear. So they know he has been wearing the same things for 3 days because they have seen it for the 2 days previous. Now, not just that, they say his pupils are pinpoint and he is not blinking like this. Freaking creepy, right? I think I'd have been like, I think we need to evaluate this. But no, nobody says a word. So he starts surgery on Mary Efert. Now, this is where he's having surgery, and then he starts talking to the OR nurse, and he's like, hey, I'm going to do a craniotomy on Floella Brown to alleviate some of the pressure. Which, first off, it's kind of weird that you're talking about another patient while you're working on another one. Anyway, the OR nurse is like, no, you can't. We don't... No, we can't do craniotomies here. We don't even have the tools to do craniotomies here. Dr. Duntsch gets pissed. He leaves the OR with Mary Efert open on the table. He goes to find the director of neurosurgery, or head of neurosurgery, whatever it's called. He's like, hey, I'm doing a craniotomy on Floella Brown. The director's like, to hell you are? No, go back in surgery. Chris Duntsch gets pissed off. He goes back in surgery, and he starts putting things in the wrong places on Mary Efert, and he's like drilling and taking things out. And everybody in the OR is just silent because they're like, what the hell is happening? He closes her up, sends her to recovery. In the meantime, Floella Brown is not improving. In fact, she's probably getting worse, and her family is like, okay, we want a different hospital. This is not okay. So they send her to a different hospital, and she ends up being taken off of life support, and Floella Brown passes away. Okay. It is that serious. She passes away. Floella Brown, it turns out, he had pierced and blocked her vertebral artery. Sorry, doctor friends. I've had my coffee. Vertebral artery. Good grief. I know I said it earlier without any issues. Well, he pierced and blocked that, okay? And that's what killed her. That's what killed Floella Brown. Freaking racking up the deaths at this point, right? Yes, he is. Ooh! I just almost put this instead of my water. I almost put in my coffee. Not good. Now, let's go back to Mary Efert. Mary Efert wakes up in extreme agony. She's screaming and it's awful. So Dr. Henderson, who's another doctor we haven't met yet, he is called in to basically fix the crap that Dr. Duntsch screwed up. And Dr. Henderson said that it's like Dr. Duntsch knew exactly what to do and did the exact opposite. Dr. Henderson said that Dr. Duntsch had poked 3 holes in the spinal column, skewered the nerves that control the leg and the bladder, and amputated a nerve bundle in her spine. Was he just cut happy? Mary is now in a wheelchair for the rest of her life because of this issue. And Dr. Henderson said that it was so bad that he legitimately thought that Dr. Duntsch, or this person, was an imposter. He, being Dr. Henderson, went as far as to get a photograph from Dr. Duntsch's medical school records to see if it was the same person. He really thought someone was impersonating Dr. Duntsch. Well, Dr. Henderson's like, shit, it is him. He really is a surgeon. Crap. So Dr. Henderson files a complaint to the Dallas Medical Board about this guy because shit, he has to be stopped at this point. By the end of the week, Dr. Duntsch's medical privileges at Dallas Medical Center are revoked. Again, he is not reported to the National Practitioners Board because they don't want to be liable. Thankfully, at this point, both Dr. Kirby and Dr. Henderson has reported him to the Dallas Medical Board, though. Anyone can report to a medical board, but only basically hospital administration can report to the National Practitioners Board. So that's the difference between the two. Okay. Months go by without hearing anything from the Dallas Medical Board about the reports that they filed. And in December of 2012, Dr. Kirby is called in to basically repair and help a woman named Jacqueline Troy, who had a spinal surgery done at like a spine institute outside of Frisco. And she was suffering from an infection and had a couple of other things wrong with her. And Dr. Kirby looks at her and says, "Your surgeon, was his name Christopher Duntsch, perchance?" She was like, "Yes." And he was like, "Good. Are you kidding me? He is still operating and still causing problems." Now, in January of 2013, Dr. Duntsch is actually reported to the National Practitioners Board by Methodist Hospital in Dallas. Now, they had never hired Dr. Duntsch, but he applied to work there. And in doing their due diligence to look at past surgeries and what he's done, they were like, "Shit, no, keep this away. This guy is awful. He needs to be reported." So I feel like they were a real MVP of this story because they never even worried about him, like suing them. They were like, "Screw it. We are reporting him. He is a menace to society." Oh gosh, is anybody else singing? No, just me. So they report him, even though he never worked for them. They reported him. So at this point, the National Practitioners Database, he's reported. Great. Step in the right direction. That's January. May 2013, I guess it takes a while to report these things, but May 2013, Dr. Kirby receives like a little flyer in the mail saying, "Come meet our new specialist." And guess who it is? Dr. Christopher freaking Duntsch. And Dr. Kirby is pissed. And he calls and he raises hell. Now, the problem is, this is at University General. And University General has been known by a couple different names. It had gone through bankruptcy. It was in a poorer part of town. So it was really struggling to have the revenue it needed to be a profitable hospital. And essentially, they didn't give what Christopher Duntsch did in the past because neurosurgeons make a lot of money for hospitals. So they completely ignored Dr. Kirby's warnings. So Dr. Duntsch performed surgery on Jerry Glidewell. Now, Jerry Glidewell had some just normal back issues. Again, a routine surgery. But Dr. Duntsch arrives about 3 hours late to surgery, and they see him arrive in a cab, which I think that's kind of shady. Like, wouldn't I don't know. Anyway, he arrives in a cab 3 hours late. And about a couple of hours into the surgery, Dr. Duntsch comes out and he tells Jerry's wife that he had to stop the surgery because he found a tumor. Now, Jerry's wife is understandably very upset, and she goes to see Jerry in recovery, and Jerry's like, "You need to call the doctor. I cannot move my arm." Now, turns out there was not a tumor. Dr. Duntsch had removed a large portion of Jerry's neck muscle, thinking it was a mass or a tumor, and that's what caused his problems. Y'all, I can't even. So guess who's called in to help? Dr. Kirby is called in to fix Dr. Duntsch's problems and repair what he did to this man. Jerry Glidewell ends up staying in the hospital for 3 months recovering. At this point, the Dallas Medical Board has been investigating for 10 months, not really doing shit, but investigating. There are calls, there are letters from Dr. Kirby, Dr. Henderson, previous patients. I mean, like, everybody is freaking out and saying, like, let's do something here. Let's do something here. They're just moving much slower than they should be. So somehow a reporter finds out about this and does a report on Dr. Death. That's what they name him, Dr. Death. And miraculously, the board decides to suspend his license in June of 2013, after the report comes out. In December of 2013, his license is permanently revoked. Now, as you can guess, what happens now? Little Mr. Golden Boy, who thinks he's perfect, he doesn't take it so well. So he moves back to Colorado to live with his parents, and really kind of starts to spiral. He gets arrested for a DUI. He files for bankruptcy. So there's lots of, he's spiraling, which fine. I wish he would spiral even more. Regardless of moving back with his parents in Colorado, he continues to come back to Dallas because at that point, he had a longtime girlfriend that he had a son with. And he comes back to Dallas to visit her for about a year. They end up having another son, and he's just traveling back and forth, staying with his parents, visiting his children, I should say. Now, in March of 2015, when he is actually visiting his kids in Dallas, he is arrested because he is found outside of a bank before it opened, banging on the doors, covered in blood, in scrubs, kind of mumbling and frantic about how his family was in danger. He was arrested, put in a psychiatric facility, evaluated, and then released. I don't know why. And I couldn't find anywhere whose blood this was. So I have a real problem with that. If anybody knows whose blood it was, I need to know because it's been haunting me. Okay. Now in April, so a month later, he's actually arrested for shoplifting from Walmart. And he is shoplifting $887 worth of things, including silk neckties, walkie-talkies, let's see, what else was it? Oh, watches, and I'm going to say this wrong. Sorry, guys. Dracar Noir. A cologne. A really gross Walmart cologne. And I just imagine him, like, in the mirror thinking he's hot shit, like, putting on his nasty smelling cologne with his silk necktie and his big fake watch. He grosses me out. Anyway. In May of 2015, sorry about that. It's in all the papers. Like, it has gone online. It's on Facebook. Everybody knows about Dr. Death. And so, being the crazy narcissist that he goes online and responds to all of these people, y'all. Like, he is talking about how good of a job he did on all of these procedures, and it ranges from like a normal kind of calm response to completely belligerent crazy. And in fact, when it was printed out, it was 80 pages worth of shit he had just written on other people's things. So the case was brought to the DA, and they ended up charging him with 5 counts of aggravated assault and 1 count of injury to the elderly. In July 2015, he is taken into custody. The trial actually doesn't start for 2 more years, which is a little crazy to me, but I guess that's kind of how it works. And after the trial, it only takes about 2 to 3 hours for the jury to find him guilty. They're like, yeah, bitch, guilty. Now, he is sentenced to life in prison, which is really kind of the first time that's happened, because it is really hard to sue a doctor for malpractice because it has to be proven they have a record of doing this. Like, you can't just do it because it was an accident. Like, it has to be intentional. They have to know that they are going to hurt someone, and they were able to prove that with Christopher Duntsch. So he was the first one that was kind of convicted on this, and it was a big deal, especially in Texas, because Texas had passed some reforms on being able to sue doctors for malpractice. And so it was a big deal that they were able to actually sue and win. And Dr. Duntsch, well, I shouldn't say Dr. Duntsch anymore because he's not a doctor. He is currently in Huntsville prison right outside of Houston. Now, the survivors of Dr. Duntsch's like maiming murder spree, a lot of them actually didn't even get a chance to sue him, because in Texas, there's a law that the maximum amount you can get for a malpractice suit for a civil suit is $250,000. So a lot of attorneys won't even take that type of case because it's not worth their time, or the amount of time that it takes. So there have been a couple that have been able to sue him because the attorneys basically did it pro bono, but for the most part, not even a thing. And Baylor, Plano, and Dallas General, they were sued, I think, a couple of times by different people, but nothing ever really came out of it, which is kind of infuriating and just really pisses me off. So for you guys, what do you think? Like, who's responsible here? Does this solely lay on Dr. Duntsch's head? Is this a problem for the hospitals? Like, what about the OR techs and the OR nurses? Like, I know that there is a culture of just believing whatever the doctor tells you, but don't they have some responsibility to essentially report things? I don't know. What do you guys think? I thought this case was fascinating because who the heck knows? Like, what would you do in that situation? So, also, I want to know, like, how much did this freak you out about your doctor? I want to go on and be like, hey, have you ever been reported to the bank? Have you ever been sent to a program for impaired physicians? Have you? I don't know. So, what do you guys think? Tell me. Tell me in the comments. Tell me below. Don't forget to... There we go. I think that's good. Don't forget to like the video on your way out. It is so helpful. I appreciate it. If you have any suggestions for future stories for true crime and art, please put it in the comments below. I'll be happy to do it for you. I'm going to try to do this once a week, so I need some ideas for stories because I'm going to have them in my head, but I want to know what you guys want to know about because especially if it's something I haven't heard of, it's super interesting for me to research it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this story. I will see you guys next week. Don't forget to subscribe and like on your way out. Okay, guys? Bye. Have a great week.